Good afternoon and welcome back to the workbench. So today I decided to do another little video reviewing some junky products. That's always fun. Have a look at see how crappy something is. I don't know why, but I find it quite amusing. Some drill bits, in fact. Drill bits of disappointment, I would call them. I bought them off eBay while forgetting about my own rule, which is that anything off eBay that is cheaper than everything else is generally has something wrong with it, even if you can't tell immediately what that is. Basically, my experience has been that drill bits from eBay were actually not too bad. Now, when I first started making my own circuit boards, I did everything drilled stuff by hand, and I used these little titanium coated drill bits from Dick Smith that I bought years and years ago, and did them by hand with this pin vise, which is quite tedious and quite slow, but that was fine back then because I only was doing small boards with very few holes and I wasn't doing very many of them. But recently I obviously wanted to do more boards, wanted to do ones with more holes, and it quickly became very annoying to do anything by hand, so that's why I bought this little drill press with the Proxon tool and the stand and everything, and that works really well. But then of course I ran into the problem, well, my old drill bits were getting old and I snapped most of them over time. I've only got a couple of 1mm and 1.5mm ones left, so that wasn't particularly useful. So I decided to look on eBay and find where I could buy some proper ones. So I bought these from a seller called Drill Bit City in America, and they sell resharpened bits from ex-board house use and stuff like that. And they're actually quite good. They're good quality. They've been resharpened well, and I had no problem with those at all. And they were good, but the only problem with those were they were quite expensive. So the next time I wanted to buy some drill bits, I decided to look for something cheaper, because even though the drill bits from Drill Bit City are a decent price, international shipping was not very good. So if you're in America, I guess they're a pretty good choice, and I would definitely recommend them because the quality and pricing is pretty good. But for me, I found quickly that it would be quite bad in terms of cost to keep buying from them. So I thought, well, can I find anything cheaper? And I saw, of course, that Chinese sell second-hand drill bits from their board houses, and they're much cheaper. You can pay like $3-4 for a set of 10 of whatever size or various sizes, and they have free shipping obviously, and they come from China. And I thought, well, you know what, let's give that a try, because hey, it's cheap, see if it's any good. And I did get some, and they actually work quite well. They're not I would say they're either not actually resharpened, or they're resharpened not that well. Some of them were definitely sharper than others, and overall I wouldn't say they're great, but compared to the pricing to pay, I was effectively paying more for shipping for the American ones than I was actually for the drill bits themselves. So for a much cheaper price, hey, $3, $4, that's fine if some of them aren't that great, and really they're all pretty much usable, even if they're not perfect. It wouldn't be good for a high volume production thing, but for hobby use, it's who cares. So I decided to go with that, and that was fine, and I've been buying those and using them, and I've had no problems actually. I still do like to use this little thing here for doing stuff by hand sometimes. Sometimes it's really nice to just be able to do something by hand and have that control over it, whereas something like this, it's several thousand RPM, you're going to just chew straight through the thing you're working on, or snap the bit or something, if you try to use that on some things, or you just need a really, really light touch. So this is still useful, even if it's not great for drilling a hole of holes in a board, such as this one, which I'm making soon. So these were all mostly broken or blunt or whatever, so I thought, well, I need to get some new ones. So I looked on eBay again, and I thought, well, the drill bits that I bought previously were fine, pretty good, so I thought, well, I can try the other ones. And obviously if you're doing stuff by hand, the tungsten carbide ones like these are useless. I mean, the tungsten carbide ones are only good in a drill press of some kind, because if you try and use these in something like this by hand, they will just snap basically instantly. So I thought, well, Here's some high-speed steel ones that are, 0.8 millimeters, 1 millimeter. That's the sizes that are usually used. I found, and the ones that of course tend to snap a lot because 0.8 millimeters is quite thin. Of course, high-speed steel by itself is not particularly useful because the abrasiveness of the PCB material. This is actually a phenolic thing, so it's not that abrasive, but the fiberglass stuff is pretty abrasive and wears drill bits down pretty quick. So if you use high-speed steel ones, they just wear out really fast. You do a couple of boards with them and then they're basically useless, so it's no good. But these ones, little gold-coloured ones, you can see, they're the titanium-coated ones, and these are actually pretty good. Well, not these particular ones, but this type is generally pretty good. So, like I said, the ones here I bought from Dick Smith years and years ago. They've actually been really good, and the ones that are still working are still great, actually. But they're too big. I've snapped all the small ones. So I bought this pack from eBay. It was like $5 for a pack of 50, and you get various different sizes. I think it was 0.8 millimeters and like 1.5 and 2 maybe, 2.5, 3. So a fairly decent selection of drill bits, and I thought, that's good. It was only $5, and I thought, well, I've had a good experience with the previous sets. These type tungsten carbide ones, fairly decent, so these should be fine. But I forgot my own rule, which is everything off eBay at the cheapest price, there's always something wrong with it. And basically with these ones is they're completely blunt and terrible. They literally have no actual cutting edge on them. Some of these are really, really bad, and if you look at this close-up photo, you can see how, comparing one of my older Dick Smith drill bits and some of these new ones, you can see that the end of these cheap ones is literally rounded. It doesn't even have a cutting edge. There's nothing there. It's basically a joke. So I emailed the seller that I bought them from, and I said, these drills are practically useless to me and they're no good. I would like a refund. And the seller sent back a message saying, he said, we'll send you another set. And I said, well, that's not particularly useful to me either, because I'm going to assume that another set will be just as blunt and just as useless as the first set. And he said, okay, well, how about you try to fix the item first? And I said, what? I said, you want me to fix the drill bits you've sold me? I said, you've sold me drill bits that are supposedly brand new and high quality and perfectly working, and they're completely useless, and you want me to fix it. I said, even if I had the ability to sharpen these tiny drill bits correctly, which I don't, it would be completely hopeless, because it would take all the titanium coating off, and then they would just wear out just as fast as standard uncoated ones. I said, this is just pointless. I want a refund, because I'm going to have to go and buy some decent ones somewhere else. And eventually I convinced the guy, and he eventually gave me a refund. But these things are basically like, they're completely pointless. They're no use to me. They're like, maybe if I sharpened them and used them just for wood or something, it would make sense. But the cost of buying a sharpening machine or whatever is like more than buying just a decent set of titanium coated ones. Okay, so now let's just do a little comparison between the 3 drill bits that I've got here. This is one of the eBay tungsten carbide ones, just generic unbranded thing. But these are still pretty good, like I said, even though they're not perfect. They're still really good. And then we'll compare that with one of my Dick Smith drill bits, which are decent quality, but these ones are quite old now, so they're starting to get a little blunt and not exactly perfect. They're still usable, but they're still not as good as the newer tungsten carbide, which are sharper. And then we can try these really cheap joke eBay drill bits that just really aren't very good at all for printed circuit boards, and I'll show you why. These are very unsuitable and basically useless if you're doing anything like this. So here's the first test with the eBay tungsten carbide drill bit. You can see it goes through really easily, and it's really clean. And the the resulting hole has very clean edges, very sharp, very good. That's what you'd expect. That's what you want, especially if you're doing really small holes. So next up is one of my old Dick Smith drill bits. This one still works fairly well, goes through fairly easily, but as you can see the hole does have a little bit of sort of rough edge around the outside, so it's not perfect. It's still usable, but it's not perfect. And here is the apparently brand new high quality eBay drill bit, standard steel with titanium coating, just like the Dick Smith one, except for the fact that it's actually blunt and terrible. And you can see it still goes through fairly easily because this is, like I said, phenolic board and it's fairly easy to cut, but the resulting hole is really ragged on the edges and just not good on both sides. It's pretty horrible, and if you can imagine if I was actually drilling that on an actual pad, it would probably tear the copper, and if it was a very small pad it's likely to rip the entire pad right off, so not very good. Alright then, so I've just finished drilling my board, and you can see all the holes in it. All nice and clean and good because I used the tungsten carbide ones that are actually decent. So yeah, these ones here, as you can see, pretty terrible, very blunt, and leave a pretty ragged hole. So yeah, it's not very good. Now you imagine on a FR4 it's even worse because the stuff is harder to cut, so you end up with an even more ragged hole. So yeah, not a very good idea. So like I said, these are things that are pretty hopeless, and if you want to go cheap drill bits, the cheap tungsten carbide ones from China seem to be pretty good, but I wouldn't go and buy a pack of these. These might be okay. The larger ones do look a bit sharper, and they might be fine for like wood or something, but definitely not very good for circuit boards. They're even not particularly symmetrically sharpened either. They're not even all the same length. So I don't know, you know, if these are like second hand or just really bad quality or what, but yeah, they're not very good, and I wouldn't really advise anyone buy them. The tungsten carbide ones are pretty good, but of course you need a drill press if you're doing that, but they're good if you're doing a lot of holes in a board, because that's what they're for. But yeah, if you do want something to do by hand with one of these, your best bet is just to go to an actual decent shop and buy some high quality ones and use those, because you're just going to not have a good time if you try to use the cheap ones. And yeah, they will be a lot more expensive, but they'll actually work. So yeah, I mean, you can use high-speed steel ones, decent quality ones of those, they will work, and if you're doing stuff by hand and you're not doing much, then they'll last a decent amount of time, I guess, but yeah, you will be going through a lot of them quite quickly compared to using the titanium plated ones, which are much better, much more resilient. So yeah, you'd have to find some at a hardware store in your local area or something, or maybe go to like DigiKey or something. They probably have them. I've never actually looked, but yeah, they probably have something like that. Maybe, I don't know, Farnell, all that lot. But yeah, there we go. It goes to show the drill bits of disappointment from eBay. You can cheap out, but not go too cheap, or else then you get problems. So yeah, anyway, that's that. So yeah, I'll see you next time.